Hey guys, it's Chris. From a python selfie gone wrong to a brutal jungle massacre of British tourists, here are 10 of the most unbelievable jungle attacks by both animals and humans. Number 10. Python selfie gone wrong. A forest ranger tried to take a selfie with a python, and it didn't really work the way he had planned. He was nearly strangled to death while trying to pose for a picture with the wild animal. It all happened while Sanjay Duda was called to a small village in West Bengal to take care of a massive Indian rock python that had swallowed a goat near a school. Initial estimates placed the snake at being around 30 feet long, which is actually kind of preposterous for a snake of this kind. It was more likely around 25 feet. Sanjay was able to wrangle the snake easily enough. However, instead of putting it in his snake bag, he draped the serpent around his neck to pose for a bunch of photographs. And the snake wasn't so interested in posing. Seconds after busting out his smartphone, the snake began to strangle him. It wrapped one of its coils around his neck and began to squeeze the life out of him. He was only able to get himself free because of the nearby villagers who saw he was having a bit of a hard time. They freed the snake and Sanjay walked away with his life. And as you may already know, Indian rock pythons are massive, non-venomous snakes that try to kill their prey via constriction. They normally strangle their prey to death before swallowing their victims head first. Number 9. Narrowly escaping a tiger. A couple of forest rangers, also in India, miraculously escaped being ambushed by an angry tiger while riding their scooter through the jungle. The forest rangers just barely escaped with their lives. They were riding along the Karnataka and Kerala border and filming the scenery as they went when, out of nowhere, a tiger burst through the jungle foliage and began speeding down the path behind the riders. The guy in front hit the gas and they shot off as quick as the scooter would go. The tiger was just inches from swiping the guys off their vehicle. It was trying to get close enough to leap through the air and tackle the men into the bushes. But luckily for them, the tiger didn't prove fast enough. Because they had already been recording the scenery, they managed to get the entire incident on video, and the footage is nothing short of heart-stopping. It's not clear exactly where the tiger came from. It literally came charging out of the forest as if it had been passing by and just spotted an easy meal. The men didn't stop to see what became of the huge cat, but chances are it ran back into the jungle and went to go hunting for something else. Number 8. Devil's Garden ants. In the jungle, there's a war going on between ants and plants. Believe me, it's a lot more dramatic than you may think. Biologist Deborah M. Gordon from Stanford University identified an ant species that creates its own special herbicide to poison plants it doesn't like. The identification was the result of a study that went on for 4 years. This was in the Amazon jungle of Peru. Researchers were focused on specific areas known as the Devil's Garden, where massive patches of vegetation have been randomly disappearing for unknown reasons. Inside the Devil's Garden, and there are a few different patches of forest that go by the same name, all of the trees are of a single species. All other trees have been wiped out. Local legends claim the patches were cultivated by an evil forest spirit. However, scientists discovered it wasn't a spirit that got rid of all the plants, it was an ant attack. As you probably already know, the rainforest is a diverse place filled with thousands and thousands of different trees and plants. But in the Devil's Garden patches, there's no diversity. It turns out a special kind of ant, called Myrmilla kista schulami, poisons every plant in the area except for the ones the colony lives in using a type of formic acid, which it produces naturally. Worker ants bite small holes in the leaf tissue, stuff their abdomen into the holes, then release the acid to slowly kill the plant. They do this with all the plants they don't like, until they have the perfect environment for themselves, in which a colony can live for up to 800 years in complete peace. Number 7. The Jungle Massacre. One of the most brutal attacks in the history of the jungle happened to 8 Western tourists in Uganda back in 1999. 4 British tourists, 1 American couple, and 2 New Zealanders were ambushed while in the middle of a jungle safari. They were trekking through the Bwindi impenetrable forest looking for rare mountain gorillas when out of nowhere, a band of rebels armed with automatic rifles and spears emerged from the jungle and attacked. 4 Ugandan park employees were slain and a group of tourists were kidnapped. The rebels were part of an ethnic Hutu group, militiamen who carried out brutal mass killings in Rwanda back in 1994. The full group of tourists counted 31, up against 150 soldiers armed to the teeth. The soldiers purposely took British and Americans and left behind the others. Many survived, but 8 chosen victims weren't so lucky. The American couple who were killed had been on their honeymoon. They decided to spend the days after their marriage vacationing through Africa while they were hacked apart with machetes. One of the British tourists killed was Mark Lindgren, a 23-year-old graduate from Nottingham University, on a tour of Africa before he started his career. He too was bludgeoned to death with primitive weapons and left to rot in the jungle. At the end of this horrifying day, most of the tourists managed to escape with their lives and the rebels vanished back into the woods. Not a lot of travelers went to the Ugandan jungle after this. So do you like hiking in the jungle or in a forest? Has anything weird ever happened? Did you see a bear? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button for more videos like this one. Number 6. The Crocodile and the Tourist. A British tourist visiting Sri Lanka got into a bit of trouble with a crocodile. And a crocodile's got to be the worst enemy to make while on vacation. The tourist's name was Paul McLean, a journalist only 24 years old who worked as a reporter for the Financial Times in Britain. According to Newsweek, he was on holiday taking surfing lessons. Unfortunately for Paul, surfing lessons turned to bloodshed. His corpse was found by divers about 225 miles from the capital of Colombo, in a mud lagoon near the coastal village of Panama. Official police reports say he had suffered 6 or 7 wounds to his right leg, and that his body was found stuck in the mud. The lagoon is near a popular surfing spot called Elephant Rock. Not only can tourists hit some serious waves here, they can also see elephants and crocodiles in the wild. Paul had been washing his hands in the river at the very edge of the jungle when a crocodile came out of nowhere, shot out of the water like a rocket with teeth, and then dragged the poor kid into the lagoon and bit him to death. Now let this be a lesson to anyone who goes into the jungle. If you're gonna wash your hands, don't do it alone in a river known to be filled with crocodiles. Number 5. Rampaging Gorilla. A group of tourists looking at silverback gorillas in Rwanda got a little more than they bargained for when one of the gorillas freaked out and went on a savage rampage. The tourists had been sitting calmly and watching the apes eat. Then, at some point, one of the gorillas decided it didn't really like the tourists watching it chow down. It charged at the guests and they tried to scatter, but they weren't fast enough. The giant ape managed to swipe aside 2 tourists and their guide, knocking them to the forest floor. Everyone else was cowering in the bushes and trying not to be noticed by this angry ape. The only thing that stopped the gorilla from bludgeoning every last tourist to death was the brave guide, who managed to get between the gorilla and the tourists and calm the beast down. The gorilla then just kind of hobbled away, sat down, and kept on eating. The tourists swiftly made their escape. To be honest, this situation could have been significantly worse. The male gorilla weighed at 420 pounds. It had such strength that it could easily have ripped off the tourists' arms and then beat them with their own appendages. After all, how would you feel if a bunch of monkeys snuck into your kitchen and watched you and your family eat while snapping pictures? Number 4. Swallowed by a python. A woman in Indonesia found herself on the wrong side of a snake's belly, and by that I mean she found herself inside the snake's belly. She'd been checking on her cornfields near the border of the jungle when she went missing. Her name was Watiba and she lived on Mana Island, basically in the middle of nowhere. Her cornfield was located roughly half a mile from her home, and at the time, she hadn't been worried about being attacked by a reticulated forest python, even though they are very common in the region. People are just kind of used to these snakes. They don't generally go attacking humans. The woman was instead worried about the local boars that had been destroying her crops. Watiba never returned home from her cornfield. Her family eventually got worried and they went out looking for her. They discovered the woman's footprints, her slippers, and her machete. The next day, 100 villagers searched the area in the daylight and discovered a massive python hanging out in the jungle about 23 feet in length. The snake had a swollen belly, looking as if it had just eaten a very large meal. Hoping against hope, the villagers cut the snake open. But unfortunately, the woman they found curled and sticky inside the snake's guts was already dead. She probably hadn't died inside the snake. Instead, it's likely she'd been strangled to death by the snake first and then gulped into its belly. Number 3. Elephant Kidnapper. In a jungle in Thailand, an elephant murdered its keeper and then kidnapped a family of tourists. The incident happened during a jungle tour in the northern city of Chiang Mai. As a bit of background, Thailand has been using elephants as major tourist attractions for years. But the practice has been coming under fire recently because elephants are so often mistreated. And having people ride on their backs is actually very bad for the animals. In the middle of the jungle tour, the elephant went berserk. It attacked and killed the keeper who was riding on its neck, and then ran off into the trees, taking 3 tourists with it, who were sitting inside a small basket on the elephant's back. The tourists didn't know what to do. The elephant was literally on a rampage, and they were just holding on for dear life, hoping they wouldn't fall out of the basket and be trampled by the angry beast. The tourists were rescued soon enough when other elephant keepers tracked them down and calmed the animal. Apparently, the keeper had been new, and the elephant hadn't liked him, and that's what caused its deadly rampage. Number 2. Drunk monkeys. Speaking of violent and out-of-control animals in Thailand attacking tourists in the jungle, a pack of drunk monkeys was caught torturing a group of friends on holiday. The macaws were stealing alcohol at the secluded Yonggassim Bay, a place only accessible via boat. Visitors here are informed that the animals are friendly. However, this day they weren't. Nobody's exactly sure how the animals got their grubby paws on booze. They probably stole it from one of the nearby bars, but regardless of how they came across the alcohol, they showed up wasted, jumping out of the jungle and attacking every tourist in sight. Video footage of the incident revealed the monkeys literally chasing a terrified woman through the sand until she eventually fell over and did a faceplant. The monkeys had to be chased off before they did horrible things to her. They continued attacking throughout the day, just being generally horrible and ruining everybody's good time. They finally went away in the night, probably when the alcohol wore off and they ran out of energy and aggression. Number 1. Hacked to death. 2 guides in Papua New Guinea were attacked in the jungle while trekking with a group of tourists from Australia and New Zealand. This is one of the remotest places in the world, and the guides were taking the tourists through an even more remote jungle trail. And that was when 6 bandits jumped out of the jungle, brandishing machetes and spears and demanding cash. Even in the wildest and remotest jungles of the farthest corners of the earth, there are still guys with knives waiting to take your money. Luckily for the tourists, the bandits spared their lives. Instead, they turned their anger on the local guides and killed them. It's likely that the bandits wanted to send a warning to the outside world to keep foreign tourists out of their area. The best way to do this appeared to be by hacking apart the guides with machetes to scare everyone senseless. Also, one of the Australian tourists took a spear through the leg. And yeah, if someone speared me through the leg, chances are I would never visit that place again, and I would tell all my friends to stay away too. The jungle trek the tourists were on spans only 3 days and goes through one of the most dangerous routes in the whole of Papua New Guinea. When the trek is over, there's a high probability to have some kind of infection, to be covered in leeches, and to maybe even have gotten malaria from a mosquito. And now, tourists can add spear through the leg to the list of potential dangers. So would you dare venture into the jungle after hearing about these attacks? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit subscribe for more.